Stars are known for being extremely hot and extremely bright balls of plasma that produce enough energy to keep surrounding objects warm even when they are tens or even hundreds of millions of miles away from it. Each one produces enough energy in 1 second to power Earth's entire electrical grid for an entire year, millions of times over. So, why is it that they appear as no more than tiny points as seen from Earth? Well, as it turns out, even the closest stars to us are really, really far away. Now, before we get into the vastness of space, I'd appreciate you would like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell to stay tuned for future content. Okay, so what's the closest star to us? Well, it's the Sun. Even though we treat it differently, there is nothing about it that's inherently different from any other star. It fuses hydrogen into helium deep within its core, and this massive release of energy is enough to keep Earth warm, even though it's approximately 93 million miles or 150 million kilometers away. This distance is known as an astronomical unit, or AU for short. It takes approximately 8 minutes for light from the Sun to reach Earth, so another way of saying it is that it's 8 light minutes away from Earth. Using light to measure distance is incredibly useful because the distances between stars are so mind-bogglingly huge that other units become too large to really make sense. So, how far are we talking? Well, the nearest star to us that isn't the Sun is 4.2 light years from Earth. For perspective, 1 light year is 5.8 trillion miles, 9.4 trillion kilometers, or 63,000 AUs in distance. Put another way, a car traveling at 60 miles an hour will take approximately 11 million years to travel 1 light year. And this nearest star is over 4 times that distance. Distances like these are the reason why even simple communication with alien civilizations outside the solar system, let alone actually physically reaching them, is almost impossible barring some sort of physics bending faster than light technology. If we were to send a message to some alien civilization living on a planet orbiting this nearest star, even if they responded immediately, it would take over 8 years before we find out if they responded. Given how much can change over a time span even that small, it's hard to imagine any stable, long-term communication taking place, and it gets exponentially harder the further the star is. Physically reaching these stars can also be largely discounted, as the fastest spacecraft we have, Voyager 1, will take 73,000 years to even get to 4 light years away. This also means that it's incredible that we can even see distant stars in the first place, as the amount of energy and light these stars produce has to be absolutely enormous for us to be able to see them with the unaided eye, even light years away. Okay, but enough about the distance, and let's talk about some of the closest stars themselves. The nearest star I've been talking about for a while is known as Proxima Centauri, and it's what astronomers call a red dwarf star. These stars tend to be a lot smaller, cooler, and dimmer than our Sun, so it's impossible to see it with the unaided eye in spite of its comparatively small distance. The star has gotten a lot of attention in recent years because of the discovery of an Earth-sized planet in its habitable zone. That is, the region where it could potentially support life similar to that of Earth. Red dwarfs tend to be extremely active in terms of flares and stellar wind, and that combined with the much closer distance to the star itself than Earth may hinder the prospects of alien life. However, without a clear look at this planet, it is almost impossible to tell whether there is actually anything interesting going on or if it's just a cold dead rock. Since it is so much closer than many other potentially habitable planets we've found, it should in theory make it much easier to study and conclude whether or not it has water or life in the coming decades. However, Proxima Centauri is just one part of a much larger star system. Sitting about 0.13 light years further away from Earth is the core of the so-called Alpha Centauri system, which is composed of 2 Sun-like stars in relatively close orbit around each other. Because these stars are more like the Sun, they shine a lot brighter than its red dwarf neighbor. The combined brightness of both stars, in combination with its close distance, makes it the 3rd brightest star in the night sky. Unfortunately, no planets are known to exist around either star, which is unfortunate since Sun-like stars are a lot more stable and conducive to life than red dwarfs. Proxima Centauri orbits the star at an insane distance of 13,000 astronomical units, or 0.2 light years, which goes to show just how far-reaching a star's gravity can extend. In fact, it is believed that tiny comets orbit our Sun at a distance of up to 2 light years, or half the distance to Alpha Centauri. These objects move so slowly and have such a large orbit that many of them take millions of years just to complete one orbit around the sun. So, what are some other notable stars that are nearby? Well, besides the stars in the Alpha Centauri system, the nearest star to our solar system is a star known as Barnard's star, which sits about 6 light years from Earth. The star is a red dwarf like Proxima Centauri, and it has been extensively studied over the years due to its close location and favorable spot near the so-called celestial equator, which guarantees that it's seen from almost everywhere on Earth provided you have at least a small telescope. You may be noticing a little bit of a pattern here. A lot of these stars are red dwarfs. This trend actually continues the further out you go, as out of the 11 stars that are within 10 light years of the Sun, 8 of them are red dwarfs. This makes sense, as statistically speaking, these small, dim stars make up over 75% of the universe's stars as a whole. This is because red dwarfs aren't very massive, so it doesn't take a whole lot for a bunch of them to form. On the other hand, stars that are hotter, brighter, and more massive than the Sun are much harder to come by. In fact, there's only one star within a 10 light year radius that is significantly more massive than the Sun, and that's Sirius, a star that's about 8.5 light years from Earth. It is a so-called A-type star, which is another way of saying that instead of being yellow like our Sun, it's white. This is because it's twice as hot as our Sun, boasting a surface temperature of over 17,000 degrees Fahrenheit or 9,000 degrees Celsius. Remember how Alpha Centauri was the third brightest star in the night sky? Well, because Sirius is several times brighter and not all that much further away, it is able to take the number one spot. The only things brighter than it are objects in our own solar system. Interestingly enough, Sirius is again part of a binary star system, this time with the so-called white dwarf, which are the cold, dead remnants of the star. It is theorized that this white dwarf was once an even more massive star that burned through its available fuel much more quickly, expelled its outer layers, and became what it is now. As you go a bit further from the Sun, more and more stars begin to pop up, some of which are like our Sun, others that are red dwarfs, and a small handful that are as massive, if not more so, than Sirius. Many of these stars have planets confirmed to be orbiting them, some of which are in the habitable zone and could thus have alien life flourishing on their surfaces. Because these stars are so much closer than many other stars that we know about, it makes it much easier for telescopes like the Webb telescope to analyze these planets and see what they're made of and whether or not they have an atmosphere. These data points might be enough to answer the question of whether or not we're alone in the universe, even if they're still so far away that we can't actually communicate with anything. And that's all I have to say about relatively close stars. As always, I would appreciate you to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell to stay tuned for future content. Thanks and have a great day.